The white ice of the Arctic stretched beyond sight. The sky, filled with heavy clouds, made the ice glow with a cold, pale light. In the midst of this frozen desolation, a small scientific camp resisted the brutality of the climate. 4 researchers had ventured to that remote region of the United States aboard a helicopter that was now leaning against the ice, covered in a layer of hardened snow. The group was led by Noah Callahan, a paleontologist determined to make his name in history. He was known for his courage on challenging expeditions and for never backing down in the face of danger. Noah was 36 years old, with shaggy brown hair, a sparse beard, and determined eyes that conveyed a confidence that infected his colleagues. The other members of the team included Hannah Wells, a geologist specializing in the study of ancient ice formations, intelligent, pragmatic, and a constant source of sensible advice. Ben Turner, a biologist researching the local fauna and their extreme adaptations. He was the youngest of the group and brought an adventurous spirit with a passion for exploring the unknown. Ava Parker, an anthropologist responsible for studying ancient legends of peoples who, centuries ago, had briefly inhabited the region. They were there because of an unusual discovery: ancient tombs buried by ice, which satellites had recently revealed. Little was known about who had built these underground chambers in such a hostile location, but the only relevant clue came from the stories of the Inuit peoples. According to legend, a great guardian in the shape of a giant bear protected the tombs, ensuring that no intruder dared disturb the resting place of the dead. And before we continue with this intriguing story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your like. This helps us bring you more content like this. Now let's get back to the story. Noah had always believed that legends were just an ancient way of explaining the unknown, and he was determined to unearth the truth behind that story. "You know what the natives say, right?" said Ben, straightening his glasses that were fogged up by his breathing. "That a giant bear protects these tombs and devours anyone who tries to desecrate them." "Legends always have a grain of truth," added Ava, without hiding her puzzled tone. "Maybe it's not a giant bear, but something real inspired this story." Noah shrugged. "We're not here to fear folklore. We're here for science. Now let's start digging." After hours of hard work, they found the entrance to a chamber covered by a thick layer of ice. The inscriptions at the entrance were complex, and Ava studied them thoroughly while the storm around them seemed to gain strength. "These inscriptions are not like any I've seen before. They speak of a guardian spirit, something much older than any known people." Ava looked at Noah with a worried expression. "No matter what they say, we're going to open this passage," Noah insisted. Using specialized equipment, they managed to melt some of the ice blocking the entrance. When they finally entered the chamber, they were greeted by a sepulchral silence and an oppressive feeling. The place was vast and full of bones that seemed to belong to extinct creatures. Ben pointed to a figure carved into the wall. "That looks like a bear, but I've never seen anything like it." The carving showed a bear of colossal proportions, with eyes that seemed to glow even in the dark. A warning engraved below it read, "Do not disturb those who rest. The guardian watches." "Well, let's hope this guardian is just a legend," Noah joked, but his voice lacked the confidence of before. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed down the corridor of the chamber. A deep sound, as if something huge was moving outside. The ice beneath their feet vibrated slightly, and everyone looked at each other in alarm. "It must be the storm," said Hannah, trying to stay calm. But deep down, they all felt something different. Something was watching them, and the sensation was as palpable as the cold seeping into their bones. Noah forced a smile and switched on a more powerful flashlight. "Let's keep going. The sooner we finish, the sooner we'll get out of here." And so they moved on, unaware that they had just awakened the tomb guardian. Noah led the group as they advanced through the icy corridor of the underground chamber. The walls were carved with symbols that Ava tried to decipher as they walked, but the tension in the air was evident. The group remained silent, listening to the echo of their own footsteps mixed with the muffled sound of the storm outside. These tombs were built by a civilization that shouldn't have existed in this part of the world, murmured Ava, stopping to look at one of the carvings. This is older than anything I've ever studied. We're in the right place to make history then, said Noah, trying to maintain his excitement. We need to document everything before collecting samples. Ben, who was further ahead, shone a light on something on the ground. His face paled. Guys, come and look at this. There were deep footprints imprinted in the ice, huge and with marks that resembled claws. They looked fresh. Hannah examined the footprints, and her tone became serious. This can't be normal. No animal should be here. Maybe it's cracking ice, said Noah, but everyone noticed the hesitation in his voice. Keep moving forward. The chamber opened into a larger room, where an ice sarcophagus rested in the center. Inside, they could see the silhouette of something that looked humanoid, wrapped in fur and bones. It was a sinister figure with closed eyes and hands folded across its chest. This is incredible, whispered Noah, amazed. Ava, what does the inscription say? Ava studied the pedestal in front of the sarcophagus, and her hands trembled slightly. May he who opens this tomb face the keeper of shadows. The protector's fury never slumbers. I'm already starting to hate this guardian, joked Ben, forcing a nervous laugh. Just then, a new noise echoed, as if something heavy was dragging along the corridor they had just crossed. The sound was getting closer, more and more intense. Hannah pointed her flashlight towards the corridor. We're not alone. Everyone was paralyzed until the light from the flashlight caught a shadow that seemed to rise and expand, taking the shape of something colossal. A deep, guttural roar echoed off the ice walls, making the ground vibrate beneath their feet. Noah shouted, "Run!" The group shot into a new side passage, separating from the main chamber. The sound of claws scratching the ice echoed behind them, accompanied by monstrous breathing. Ben stumbled and fell, leaving his backpack behind. He turned and saw a huge figure emerge from the darkness, a bear of enormous proportions with glowing eyes and a thick ice-white coat. The creature watched them with frightening intelligence. "Noah, help me!" shouted Ben. Noah and Hannah pulled Ben up in time, seconds before the creature smashed into where he lay. The bear roared, an explosion of sound that made the ice on the ceiling crack slightly. They took refuge in a small side room and piled blocks of ice at the entrance to protect themselves. Everyone was panting, their eyes wide with fear. This is the Guardian," said Ava, her voice shaking. "He exists." Noah tried to keep control of the situation. "We have to think. We can't panic. There must be another way out here." Hannah pointed to a tunnel that extended to the left of the room. "Let's go that way. We can't get stuck here." The group began to move again, but the creature wouldn't give up. Distant growls echoed as the bear walked through the corridors, sniffing out their presence. As they continued down the tunnel, Ava found another inscription. It says that there is a way to appease the Guardian. They talk about an offering, something that respects the memory of the dead. "That won't help now," whispered Ben, desperate. The group reached a new chamber where there was a statue carved in ice, a figure of a woman holding a small bowl of offerings. Ava examined the statue and had an idea. "We have to put something here, something to show respect." Noah took out a medallion that he had found at the entrance and placed it in the statue's bowl. The silence that followed was unnerving. The creature's roar echoed again, but this time it sounded more distant. "It seems to have worked," muttered Hannah, but no one dared to really believe it. However, they knew that the danger wasn't over yet. They were trapped in an ancient tomb, hunted by a legendary creature, and they needed to find a way out before the Guardian returned to finish what he had started. While the group tried to catch their breath, Noah assessed the situation. The feeling of being hunted was oppressive, and he knew that every second in that tomb increased the risk that they wouldn't make it out alive. "We need to find the exit now," said Noah, his face marked with tension. Ava, you said there's a way to appease the Guardian. Is there anything else about that in the inscriptions?" Ava ran a trembling hand over the letters carved into the ice statue. "The inscriptions say that the Keeper respects those who show themselves worthy, but they don't explain how. Let's keep exploring this chamber. There must be something more." Ben moved a little away from the group, shining his flashlight on the opposite wall. As he touched the ice, he felt a faint wind coming from an almost imperceptible opening. "I think I've found something here." The others approached, and Noah examined the passage. It was narrow and seemed to lead to another chamber or, with luck, to the exit. "We need to open this passage." Using their tools, they carefully began to chip away at the ice. With each blow, the distant sound of the Guardian's roars made the icy air vibrate. The tension grew by the second. Suddenly, the passage opened enough for them to pass through. The group squeezed through to the other side and emerged into a new, larger chamber, where the temperature seemed even lower. In the center of the room, there was an altar made of stone and ice, with symbols that glowed faintly in the torchlight. And on the altar rested something surprising: a dagger carved from bone with intricate carvings that resembled the shape of a bear. "This must be important," said Hannah, approaching cautiously. Ava studied the altar. "This dagger, it must be what they used in ancient rituals to honor the Guardian. It could be a key." Noah nodded. "If it is, let's use it to find a way out, or at least get this creature away from us." He picked up the dagger, feeling a strange weight in his hands. As soon as the dagger was removed from the altar, a rumbling echoed throughout the tomb, as if something had been awakened. The surrounding ice walls began to shake, and from the corridor through which they came, the Guardian's roar sounded, this time fiercer than ever. The creature was close. "Quickly, to the altar!" shouted Ava. "Put the dagger back!" Noah hesitated, his eyes fixed on the dagger. "What if we need it to open the exit?" "We don't have time," shouted Ben, panicked. Before they could decide, the creature emerged from the corridor. The colossal bear stood tall, filling the chamber with its monstrous presence. Its glowing eyes fixed on the group, and it advanced slowly, as if savoring their fear. Noah gripped the dagger tightly. He knew that putting the dagger back on the altar could save them all, but he also felt that it was the only artifact that could lead them out of this nightmare. He stepped forward, facing the Guardian. "We're not going to die here." Noah raised the dagger, pointing it at the giant bear. Surprisingly, the creature stopped, tilting its head as if trying to understand the gesture. "I think it's working," whispered Hannah. However, the moment of calm was interrupted when the ground beneath the altar began to crack, forming a deep fissure. A bluish light emanated from within the crack, illuminating the chamber with a supernatural clarity. "That looks like a portal," said Ben, alarmed. Noah made a quick decision. "Let's go through." The group didn't hesitate. They jumped into the bluish crevice, feeling an intense force pull them down. Everything around them turned into a whirlwind of light and cold, until suddenly they found themselves in a new room, illuminated by crystals that emanated a natural, welcoming light. In the center of the room was a clear inscription: "Here lies the secret to freeing the Guardian and escaping the eternal curse." Ava read the inscription aloud, and her voice echoed through the room. "Freeing the Keeper. That means that he too is trapped here, condemned to protect these tombs forever." Noah looked around, panting, the dagger still in his hands. "We need to figure out what to do. The only chance of escaping this place is to release this creature from his duty." They were facing the biggest dilemma of their lives. Freeing the Guardian could mean freeing them from that nightmare, but also unleashing a force that could be dangerous to the outside world. Time was running out, and the Guardian's roar sounded closer, as if the creature was about to break through the chamber's barrier. The Guardian's roar echoed on the other side of the invisible barrier that separated them. Noah and the group knew that the protection wouldn't last forever. The inscription said they had to free the creature, but how could they do that without unleashing chaos? Noah knelt in front of the inscription on the ground, studying the carvings. The dagger in his hand seemed to pulsate, as if it had a life of its own. This dagger is the key, but we don't know how to use it. Ava approached him, trying to remain calm. The only way to free the Guardian must be linked to the original ritual. We need to find out what this protector's real purpose was. Hannah looked at the crystals that illuminated the room. What if this place is some kind of prison? Perhaps the Guardian was imprisoned here with the dead, condemned to watch over them forever. Ben moved away from the group, exploring the walls. He found a series of drawings that seemed to tell a story. Here, look. I think I found the answer. Noah, Ava, and Hannah approached and looked at the carvings. The first showed a humanoid figure surrounded by hunters armed with spears. The second showed the same figure being transformed into a giant bear. In the third, the bear was kneeling in front of a group of people as if accepting a burden. In the last one, the bear figure was trapped inside a chamber, surrounded by symbols of imprisonment. "This is a voluntary sacrifice," whispered Ava, impressed. "The creature was a human protector who offered to guard the tombs. He accepted this curse to protect the dead from looters and desecrators." Noah closed his eyes for a moment, trying to process the information. So he's here by choice, but he's trapped forever. We need to free him from the burden. Ben frowned. And how do we do that without releasing a monster into the world? Ava pointed to the dagger. The dagger symbolizes his commitment to this protection. If we use the dagger on the altar, we can break the bond that keeps the Guardian here. But there's a risk, said Hannah. If the ritual goes wrong, we could unleash all that force in anger. Noah stood up, holding the dagger tightly. We can't stay here forever. We have to risk it. He walked to the center of the chamber, where a circle of symbols seemed to be the perfect place for the ritual. Noah placed the dagger in the center of the circle and looked at the group. If anything goes wrong, I want you to run. Ava shook her head. We're in this together. Noah began to chant the words engraved on the wall, following the translation that Ava had provided. The light from the crystals intensified, pulsing in sync with the words of the ritual. The barrier separating the Guardian began to shake, and the creature's roars became more desperate, as if it were being pulled into the chamber. Suddenly, the ground shook, and the colossal figure of the bear appeared on the threshold of the chamber, watching the group with eyes burning with fury and pain. No, Guardian, we know your sacrifice, shouted Noah. You protected the dead and were a faithful servant. We ask that you be freed from your curse. The bear roared, and the fury in its eyes seemed to subside for a moment, giving way to something deeper, a recognition. The dagger in the center of the circle began to float, shrouded in a golden light. Suddenly, the dagger shot towards the bear, penetrating its chest with supernatural precision. The creature let out a final roar that echoed through the ice chambers, like a sound of release. The bear's figure began to dissolve, transforming into a humanoid figure, covered in a soft, tranquil light. The figure looked at the group gratefully before disappearing completely. The surrounding walls began to glow, and the bluish light from the crack they had crossed now took the form of a portal. Hannah stepped forward. I think this is our way out. Noah nodded with a sigh of relief. Let's get out of here before it closes. The group stepped through the portal, feeling a comforting warmth replace the oppressive cold. When they opened their eyes, they were outside the tomb, under a grey sky and a snowstorm that seemed to be easing now. The helicopter was a few meters away, still covered in snow, but intact. It was as if nothing had happened. We did it, muttered Ben, still in shock. We did it. Noah looked out over the white expanse of the Arctic and thought of the figure they had freed. They had brought peace to a soul that had been imprisoned for centuries, fulfilling their duty to protect the dead. Let's get out of here, said Noah. We have a story to tell the world. The group walked in silence to the helicopter, still impacted by what had happened inside the tomb. The biting wind seemed milder now, and there was a strange sense of peace in the atmosphere. Hannah helped Ben onto the aircraft while Noah and Ava checked that the vehicle was still in a condition to take off. "Do you think we did the right thing?" Ava asked, her voice filled with uncertainty. "Freeing the Guardian, won't that have consequences?" Noah looked her in the eye. "I think it will, but he deserved his freedom after centuries in prison, and somehow I feel we did the right thing." "Engines in order," Hannah shouted, gesturing to Noah. "We're ready to take off." Noah took over and started the helicopter's engine. The propellers began to spin, lifting the snow around them. They were ready to leave that frozen land and finally return to civilization. But before the helicopter could take off, a deep tremor made the ice beneath them vibrate. Noah looked at the horizon and felt his heart speed up. A colossal shadow was beginning to form, like a figure emerging from the frozen ground itself. "This can't be happening," whispered Ben, terrified. The figure of the Guardian reappeared, but this time not as a bear, but as a mass of shimmering energy, something that seemed to be the fusion of spirit and supernatural power. Its eyes, two bright lights, focused directly on the helicopter. "He's not trying to attack us," said Ava, almost in a trance. "He's showing us something." Suddenly, images began to form in the air around the figure. They saw scenes of war, destruction, and fire. People fighting for power, blood being spilled on the ice, tombs being violated by explorers, seeking treasure with no respect for the dead. "He's showing us why he took on this burden," Hannah murmured. "To protect the innocent from the atrocities of the living." The Guardian raised his spiritual arms, and one last image emerged, they themselves entering the tomb, defying the warning to let the dead rest in peace. "He's asking us if we're like the other looters," said Ava, her voice trembling. "If we're worthy of having made it out alive." Noah made an impulsive decision. He switched off the helicopter's engine and got out, walking towards the glowing figure, despite the biting cold and the shouts of protest from his colleagues. "We're not looters," shouted Noah, facing the spirit without fear. "We respect your sacrifice. We came in search of knowledge, not treasure or destruction. And we did everything in our power to free you from the curse that imprisoned you." The Guardian approached, hovering over Noah like a luminous shadow. For a moment, silence reigned, only the sound of the wind echoing between the walls of ice. Then, slowly, the figure of the Guardian raised one of its arms and pointed to the sky. A golden light opened up in the clouds above, like a beam of pure energy that illuminated the entire horizon. Ava and the others got out of the helicopter, observing the phenomenon. Hannah whispered, "I think he's telling us that our mission is complete. We can go." The figure of the Guardian slowly began to dissipate, its light fragmenting into thousands of golden particles that floated towards the sky. Finally, the colossal shadow disappeared completely, leaving only a sense of calm and serenity. Noah returned to the helicopter, and the team exchanged emotional glances. They had witnessed something that no one would ever believe, and somehow they knew that they would never be the same again. "Now we can leave in peace," said Noah, starting the engine once more. The helicopter finally took off, and as they climbed, the group watched the vast white expanse of the Arctic stretch out below them, now with a new perspective on what it meant to respect the past and the sacrifice of those who protected the dead. Ben broke the silence. "We have a history that the world will never forget." And so they disappeared over the frozen horizon, carrying with them the weight of an ancient secret and the relief of having been forgiven by the keeper of the tombs. After the flight over the white expanse of the Arctic, the helicopter finally spotted the research base where they had started their expedition. When they landed, the team was greeted with relief and curiosity by the other scientists and staff. No one knew exactly what they had faced, but the state of exhaustion and expressions of shock on the faces of Noah, Ava, Ben, and Hannah told part of the story. Hours later, gathered in one of the heated living quarters, the team began to recount what had happened. Noah tried to focus on the scientific discoveries and the complexity of the tombs, avoiding mentioning the supernatural creature in detail. However, Ava insisted that some truths could not be omitted. "We can't pretend we didn't see what we saw," said Ava. "We witnessed the presence of the Guardian, something that transcends what science can explain." Ben, more cautious, crossed his arms. "Do you think anyone will believe that we've released the spirit of an ancient protector?" Hannah shook her head. "They don't need to believe in the creature. They need to understand the message he left, respect the past, and the memories of the dead." Noah made the final decision. We'll report the discovery of the tombs, but we'll keep the Guardian's part a secret. The world is not ready for this truth. Our focus will be on the importance of preserving this site as an untouchable historical heritage." So they wrote a detailed report, emphasizing the importance of protecting the tomb from looters and the need to respect the rituals and traditions surrounding the site. A few months later, Noah and his team's report caught the attention of the academic world and indigenous communities who recognized the tombs as a cultural heritage site. An international expedition was organized to document the site and ensure that it was protected from any undue exploitation. At the conference they arranged to announce their findings, Noah took to the stage and spoke about the importance of respecting the past. These tombs represent not only the history of an ancient people, but also the message that we must honor those who came before us. Our expedition discovered that there is something greater in protecting the legacy of the dead. We shouldn't seek knowledge just for glory, but with humility and respect. Ava, Hannah, and Ben looked at him with pride, knowing that there was much more behind those words. They knew that the Guardian was somehow still present, watching over the eternal rest of those under his protection. After the presentation, a middle-aged man with a serious expression approached the group. He introduced himself as Samuel Davis, a representative of an organization dedicated to preserving historic sites in remote areas. "I've read your report," said Samuel, narrowing his eyes. "You mentioned an unusual phenomenon in the tombs, a sense of protective presence, something that hasn't been explained by science." Noah kept his gaze steady. "That's right. Maybe there are things we'll never fully understand." "I believe you," said Samuel to everyone's surprise. "There are forces beyond our knowledge. I want to ensure that these tombs are protected forever. I will do everything in my power to keep this place safe." The group exchanged surprised and grateful glances. Finally, there was someone willing to protect this place, even without all the explanations. Months later, the tomb was officially declared a sacred and protected site. The government and preservation organizations established security measures to prevent any intruder from desecrating the site. Noah, Ava, Ben, and Hannah continued their scientific careers, but they never forgot their experience in the Arctic. In their hearts, they carried the memory of the Guardian, the creature who sacrificed his freedom to protect the dead and history. One evening during a group meeting, Ava raised her glass of wine. "To this toast I dedicate to all those who protect history and the legacy of those who came before us, and to the Guardian, wherever he may be." Noah, Ben, and Hannah raised their glasses in silence, and for a brief moment, a light breeze blew through the room as if something was blessing them. The Guardian's story would never be forgotten by those who had witnessed his liberation. They knew that the past, present, and future were interconnected, and that respect for everything that had happened was the key to a more respectful and harmonious future. What did you think of this outcome? Leave your opinion in the comments. We'd love to know what you think. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your like to support our work. See you in the next video.